Good morning. I'm Kat Dillard, the volunteer coordinator here at the North Carolina Arboretum. We're here just outside the Rocky Cove Railroad on a busy, beautiful fall Friday, and we're really glad you joined us here today. Today we're going to kind of walk through some of the fall foliage and just see what we happen to see along the trail. Here is the Rocky Cove Railroad. It is modeled after the two towns of Todd and Bess, which are mining and lumber towns here in western North Carolina. And the little town is set up to look like the buildings might have looked at the turn of the century when the Biltmore Estate was being built. So we're going to continue on straight through the broad green here to the forest meadow. So if you can see the backdrop behind me here, this is the forest meadow. The trees that are planted here are actually planted for their superior fall foliage. And so as we walk through, most of these trees are marked. So if you wanted to know what types of trees to plant in your backyard or your garden, these are a great specimen or examples of trees that would be colorful all throughout the year, or at least during the fall when a lot of your wildflowers and plants have started to go dormant. Come with me. Good. Wow, the trees are looking great down here in the Natural Garden Trail. This here is a meadow, and it is located kind of on the forest edge, which is a really important ecosystem for a lot of different animals. Because the trees get really tall and block out a lot of the sunlight, a forest meadow actually opens up that canopy and allows things like wildflowers to grow. And so in this area you would have a lot of birds collecting the seeds from the wildflowers. You would have a lot of butterflies and bees pollinating the flowers when they're in full bloom. So right now it looks kind of shrubby and dry, but that is just part of that life cycle. And but this is a really important part, and you'll notice as you walk through here there are a lot of bird houses and things like that. We might even look upon a nice little bird popping in to say hello to us today. This sculpture here is actually a installation by Grace Cathy, and it does show the life cycle of the monarch butterfly, which is a really important species as far as it being a pollinator. But as you see here, if I could point this out, it starts out with the egg stage here, and then it goes into the larva, which is the caterpillar, and then the pupa, which is the chrysalis, and then as you see it kind of grows into this beautiful monarch. and it's kind of made into like a mandala or a radial symmetry or something like that. But it's a beautiful piece. We do have lots of monarchs that visit these flowers in the late summer and early fall before they migrate and head down to their warmer climates. Oh, speaking of birds, there's one now. Thought I would stop here and point out a couple of species. One of my favorite trees is actually the sycamore. We can walk up closer to that bark if you'd like, but as you see, it kind of has this flaky bark. It's different kind of shades and tints of grays and browns, and it gets really flaky as it gets up to the top, where it'll predominantly turn more of a lighter white. It has these beautiful leaves. It's not one that's necessarily strong in color for the leaves, but that bark is just beautiful and shines really bright when you're driving down through the late fall when the leaves have started to fall off in the winter. And it generally grows down along rivers and waterways. Just behind me we have another beautiful tree, the silver bell. That is a pretty common tree in western North Carolina. You can see some of that great yellow that is popping through. There's another one here that's getting a little bit more sunlight, so it's definitely turning more yellow. Oh look, there's a monarch flying in the sky now. Oh, that makes me happy. So we just exited the forest meadow, and we are now on the Natural Garden Trail, which connects our two buildings, so the Education Center and the Baker Visitor Center. And along the way, there's some great things that we'll point out, but I did want to stop and talk about one of our native trees. This is a Carolina hemlock. Some of you may know that it is being attacked by the woolly adelgid, which is an invasive insect that actually goes in and it sucks the water. If you think about trees have a water line that actually get water up to the top of the tree, and those woolly adelgids will get in there and they'll actually drill holes in the bark and suck out that water, and it'll actually cause the tree to kind of dry up. This species is really important to our habitat as it grows really close to our creeks and rivers and shades it and keeps it nice and cool for our trout, which like the water nice and cold. This species here seems to be doing okay, but there are many species along the creeks and such that aren't doing as well. So the Natural Garden Trail is designated also as a track trail, which is in partnership with Kids in Park, which is part of the Blue Ridge Parkway Foundation. And so it's a nice, even, flat trail if you wanted to bring out strollers or children. It's less than a mile long, so it's a great hike to get out and do with the whole family. And there's fun things like this log here. Many children will actually start at the top of it here and then crawl through it and exit out the other end, because this tree, when it fell, had actually been hollowed out. So all of the heartwood had been eaten by insects and worms and fungus and all of those things. And when it fell over, it made a perfect little tunnel for children. A beautiful hickory right through the woods there. I don't know if you can see how brilliantly yellow it is. Some sourwoods got their nice kind of red orange, and a red maple here. A little bit of green, a little bit of orange. Lots of colors shining through the leaves, and then the sun is poking through as these leaves have started to fall. Just to talk a little bit about the science behind it all. Trees are said to purify the air or to make the air quality better. In essence, they start with 6 molecules of water and 6 molecules of carbon dioxide with a little bit of sunshine. They break that down and they make glucose and oxygen. That oxygen is released and you and I get to breathe that nice clean air instead of that carbon dioxide. And then that glucose is actually what supplies the tree with the energy to grow. And as the fall and the winter come through, it takes the tree more energy to create that energy than it's actually getting from that glucose. So it will just dispel those leaves or get rid of them. So it's a great lesson. We can learn a lot from trees. The things that we don't need in our lives, we could just get rid of them, right? But as those leaves fall to the ground, we get all of this leaf litter, and that actually starts to decay. So all of those sugars and those organic compounds that are in the leaves actually start to break down. And so a lot of people during the fall will say, what is that smell that I smell when I'm walking through the forest? And it's just those sugars and everything breaking down as the microorganisms and the bugs and everything eat it and turn it back into soil. And so some of that is scientific. Some of that is actually also psychological, in that we have associated emotions with fall. Maybe we think about school, maybe we think about campfires and pumpkins and apples. So a lot of that is just a sweet herbal smell that we just love, that brings us back to nature. So now we're standing here at the intersection of the Natural Garden Trail and the Plants of Promise Garden. So if you head out there, it'll take you just outside the Education Center to the Plants of Promise. Those are plants that kind of showed promise, the best plants that would grow in this zone in western North Carolina. And it is our oldest garden, so it's very well established. It's full of staff favorites and picks by our gardeners, their favorite plants that show promise. But I just love the way that the trails kind of weave around each other. It is paved, so it's a great place if you do need something a little bit flatter for a smoother surface for walking. I also wanted to stop and just kind of talk about not all of the trees here in western North Carolina are going to turn these vibrant colors and fall to the ground. We have lots of evergreens like the American holly that you see here, and they're very important to the wildlife here. If you can see on that holly and this, I think that's a viburnum over here, they have these great red berries, and those will feed a lot of birds and mammals throughout the winter. Now that all of the leaves have fallen off of the trees and the plants have gone dormant. So it is a very, very important species to the wildlife here. As you can see, the leaves are very prickly, which are there to protect the leaves, but the tree creates the berries so that the birds and stuff might take them to another part of the garden and do their thing and plant another American holly. See the beautiful hickory here, a nice sourwood, a couple more sourwoods. Have a great view of the mountains here. This is a favorite spot for a lot of our visitors. As you can see here, we're seeing past the valley into the next mountain range there, and you can start to see some of that fall foliage showing up on the mountains there. Also, all of that is part of that French Broad watershed that we were talking about with all of the water, the little tributaries that are flowing into the French Broad River just outside the gates here at the Arboretum. There's another great view up here if we have time for that. It's another great view of the mountains. You could actually hear the creek down below us as well. The sound is traveling up the side of the mountain. We are a little bit past peak. I think after the last couple of days of rain, it's probably knocked off a lot of the leaves. But there's still many great things to do here at the Arboretum. Just outside the Education Center, we do have some bird feeders. The winter is a great time to see birds feeding During this time of year, a lot of the birds will start migrating south, so you'll see a lot of species that we normally wouldn't see in this area. And then there's always that beautiful view. So that concludes this week's Fall Friday. We appreciate you joining us today, and hope you can come out and visit us soon and walk the trails yourself. So this is Kat signing off. Happy Friday!